Welcome back to Real Shift, where we like to talk real shit all day, every day, all for the love of movies. I am Joe, and today I'm going to be talking about yet another ridiculous news article. But before I do, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Any little bit of feedback or support would be greatly appreciated, as always. So before I get into this, I made a couple of videos last week discussing the whole cancel campaign against Gone with the Wind and how it backfired, and people actually went and seeked the movie out even more because people were trying to cancel it. So now we're coming to a point where I guess the media, or whatever you want to call them, scumbags is what I call them, but they're basically trying to now find other movies, other classic movies to seek out and destroy and try to tear apart and try to discredit them. So now it's become clear to me that not only is our modern entertainment clearly under attack with all of the garbage that we get fed on a daily basis and on every week, but now they're actually going out and attacking older movies, things that we've loved, things that we've grown up on, things that are a part of us. And none more so than in this current Variety article that I'm going to talk about here today, where it actually talks about, in their words, 10 problematic movies that deserve some type of disclaimer. So obviously they're referencing the whole Gone with the Wind thing, and these are 10 classic movies that they feel need a disclaimer, that they feel in some way is offensive, I guess you could say. It should be noted, too, that one of the advertisements in the middle of the article is actually a Variety interview with Spike Lee. And to me, that tells you all you need to tell you right there. I mean, in the same token of you attacking classic films, you're also promoting someone who constantly basically race baits in all of his movies. And that is something that I spoke about in my last video when I actually reviewed his newest movie. And yeah, how he relies heavily on racial issues in his movies and is really a one-trick pony in that aspect. So it was just kind of funny that they actually had a interview with him being advertised within this article. But as far as the article itself goes, this is an article from Variety, and it's called 10 Problematic Films That Could Use Warning Labels. Now, I'm not going to go through all 10 because, quite frankly, I would be here all day. So I'm going to go through the most egregious ones in my eyes. And the first one on the docket here is Dirty Harry. Now, if you're not paying attention to the news, Cops and I think it's called Live PD was actually canceled recently. Now, Cops have been on the air since the early 90s or something like that, maybe the late 80s. I'm not exactly sure, but when I saw that happen, I immediately turned to my wife and I said, watch, they're going to start attacking movies based around cops at some point. And it's true, because the first movie that they mention in this article is actually Dirty Harry. And the reason that he mentions it, essentially, is because Dirty Harry himself is a renegade cop, taking the law into his own hands, etc., etc. It's a theme that's been used in many movies, and they would have to cancel a lot of movies, quite frankly, if they wanted to eliminate renegade cops. But Dirty Harry is the most famous, probably, of the renegade cops. And he does take the law in his own hands because he's in a city that's, overridden with bad people, with crime, and he gets tired of it. And we, as an audience, sympathize with that. We can understand why he would want to do that. We can understand why he would go outside the means of the law to get rid of horrible people, and that's what he does. And it's just funny to me that they would attack someone like that, someone who is taking down criminals. I never understand the whole idea behind, I guess, making the criminals in some way sympathetic, like murderers or drug dealers or whatever he's attacking in the movie. But that's what they're trying to do, essentially, is turn those characters sympathetic. And they're not supposed to be sympathetic. They're villains. Like, that's their purpose in the movie. And I just find it funny that now it's going to come to the point where, yes, they're going to start attacking these cop movies as well and trying to cancel them. So that was the first one that they mentioned. The next one is really a head scratcher to me. It's Forrest Gump. You would think Forrest Gump at this point would be pretty much untouchable. I mean, what do they say in... There's a line in This Is the End about how they're trying to explain that one of the characters is a hipster and basically saying, oh, you must hate things that are universally loved. And they actually mention Forrest Gump. He was like, you probably hate Forrest Gump, don't you? He was like, yeah, I think it's a piece of shit. And he's like, well, that makes you a hipster. So obviously Forrest Gump is pretty much universally loved at this point. But what's interesting is the reasons that they are saying that Forrest Gump, of all things, the thing you would think would be most protected, is in need of some kind of warning in front of it. So Forrest Gump was made by intelligent people with 6 Oscars and is beloved to many. While the film is condescending to anyone with a disability, now I'm going to stop it right there, condescending to anyone with a disability, I think, in my personal opinion, it paints people with a disability in a positive light, because it says, even though this man has a disability, none of that held him back. Like, he went and did great things. He is a national hero. He fought in the Vietnam War. He met countless presidents and exposed conspiracies inadvertently, but so he did many things as a person with a disability. So I think that would, in my eyes, that would put him up on a pedestal and be someone you could almost look up to. But of course, with these people, they try to automatically use that as a negative. Furthermore, it says Vietnam vets and people with AIDS, among others, are also not shown in a kind light. I mean, as far as Vietnam vets goes, again, I think if they're referencing Lieutenant Dan and his I guess bitterness, I mean, that's like a natural emotion you would have in that moment. And the whole point of his character essentially is for him to be bitter, and then for his time with Forrest to eventually bring him out of that bitterness, and they become good friends, and he shows up at the wedding at the end. And yeah, it's just a matter of having a relationship between the two and having issues initially, and then a friendship growing from them. So I don't really see an issue with that. As far as people with AIDS go, I mean, it shows the consequences of living a life like Jenny did. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You can't just go out there and do whatever you want, especially in today's day and age. But even back then, there's certain risks that come with living a lifestyle like that, and I think that should be taken as a cautionary tale, not as a negative thing. So again, just more ridiculous things that they're pointing out here. Hostility toward protesters and activists and counterculture. And then we have basically what they're saying is the title character is named after a Ku Klux Klan member. And I mean, I guess you could take that as something that would be offensive, but doesn't it say more that he has roots in this racist society, and he grows up to be a free-thinking person who befriends the first real black man that he has a lot of interaction with, and being Bubba, when he forms a brotherhood with him in the army. I think, again, that should be looked at as a positive, like it's showing you that you're not a product of the place you come from, and that you can be your own person. And again, they turn it into a negative. Of course they do, because they turn everything into a negative. But so that's some of the thoughts they had on Forrest Gump. The next one they mention is Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and this is another one that's a head scratcher to me. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas are generally compassionate filmmakers, but this film went a little too far trying to replicate the mood of the 1930 action serials. Like those old movies, the exotic villains are portrayed as primitive and bloodthirsty foreigners, resulting in negative and stereotypical depictions of India and Hindu customs. Look, I mean, if you want to say that these roles are a bit stereotypical, maybe they are. I mean, I don't really have an issue with them saying that necessarily. I don't really think that that's problematic. I think that that's something that is just common back in the day. I mean, typically in these movies you would have foreign villains, and you would go to an exotic place, and there would be people there who are not nice people, and you would have to overcome them. But I find it what I find really interesting is that they pick Temple of Doom of all things because essentially Indiana Jones is ending child slavery in that movie. Like, he's literally, that's the most, probably one of the most noble things that Indiana Jones has ever done in any of his movies. And he literally rescues hundreds and hundreds of children from slavery and manual labor. And this is the movie that they choose to call problematic. Like, there's an issue here because there might be some Indian stereotypes in the movie. So you see how they nitpick certain things, but then they overlook major things, like what the actual plot of the movie was. And it's crazy to me that Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom now is also no longer safe, because you would think Indiana Jones for the most part is, again, pretty wholesome entertainment. Like, it's all around beloved for the most part, and it's a movie trilogy that's damn near perfect. I mean, it's hard to find flaws in the original 3 Indiana Jones movies. But, of course, cancel culture has to come out and do what they do and nitpick the shit out of everything, and that's how it goes now. The next one, and probably, I might do 2 more. So the next one I'm going to do is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is a fairly recent movie, and if you've watched any of my videos, you know how fond of that movie I am. I thought it was the best movie from last year in 2019. And I still feel that way. I've watched it many times since then, and it gets better each time I watch it. That movie has so much more going on inside of it. I think a lot of people just didn't take the time to actually let it sink in or actually think about it or even give it a second chance. But it's a very, very, very well-made movie, and I think it's Quentin Tarantino's most mature movie for sure. But Quentin has always had a little bit of controversy surrounding him because of his use of certain words, and you know what those words are. But he's had people come out and defend him. People like Samuel L. Jackson, who say, Quentin has earned the right to not have restrictions put on him and to be able to use the words and write the words that he feels are necessary for the story. And I've been waiting a long time. I mean, they already attempted to cancel Quentin Tarantino, so it's already happened, really, but I've been waiting a long time for them to attack specific movies. I think they did attack Django at one time, which, again, Django is... He basically said in an interview that he wanted to create a black superhero, someone for little black children to look up to, someone who overcomes these horrible conditions and goes on to be a superhero-like figure. So you would think, again, that would be a positive thing, but of course everyone takes everything to the negative. But as far as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood goes, Quentin Tarantino is adored by cinephiles, and it stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. And they are both charismatic and talented. It's so easy to overlook the film's regressive messages. It's about 2 middle-aged white guys who long for the old days in Hollywood. In other words, make Hollywood great again. So again, they're bringing their politics into it. They're taking their personal feelings. Whoever wrote this article is taking his personal feelings about politics and trying to inject it in a movie. I in no way took it as a political thing or even a racial thing when they were longing for the old days of Hollywood. It's about a guy who grew up in a certain time, and his time has passed him by, and he's trying to find his place in that world now, in the entertainment industry. And it's a difficult thing to age and then to have the culture basically pass you by. And I never took it as anything that was meant to be disrespectful to the current culture or anything like that. It was just looking at a certain snapshot of that time in Hollywood and how a aging actor would deal with that sort of thing. So again, I think this guy is just reading too much into stuff. The film is set in 1969 when some Americans felt the status quo was being threatened by minorities, hippies, and newly liberated women. Now they do talk down to hippies quite a bit in the movie, so I guess I can see where he's going with that one. But as far as the minorities and the liberated women thing, I mean, I think, and this is just my opinion, but I think Margot Robbie's portrayal of Sharon Tate and the way that character was constructed, I thought it was brilliant. And a lot of people didn't take the time to actually assess the movie and just said, oh, he's mistreating her by not giving her any lines. But she didn't need any lines. He showed a young woman who was at the start of her career, and she was very excited about how things were going. And she so excited so that they have that whole scene where she goes into the theater and she sits down and she just wants to watch herself, and she's completely engrossed in it, and all she wants to do is watch herself perform, and you could tell she has a love for what she does. And it's just adding to the tragedy that was the whole story of Sharon Tate, and showing that her loss was a great loss for Hollywood, for the world, that she was a pure person and didn't deserve the fate that she got. So again, they're looking at it from the complete opposite perspective and turning everything into something it's not. Like, it was really a love letter to Sharon Tate, and he did it in a short amount of time because, yes, she doesn't have a lot of screen time, but in my personal opinion, he achieved what he was trying to achieve in that little bit of time that she had. And I think that is not easy to do, but that's why Quentin is who he is and why he's a great filmmaker. So again, I think this guy is just reading too much into stuff. And it also talks about the Bruce Lee story and how it essentially, I guess, makes Bruce Lee look inferior or whatever, and how he was the biggest Asian star at the time. And again, this is for people who don't understand and didn't actually watch the movie, but Bruce Lee, that whole Bruce Lee story in that movie could have been completely orchestrated in Cliff Booth's head. Like, there's nothing really that actually definitively says that happened. It could just be that Cliff Booth is a little bit pig-headed, a little bit, I guess you could say, full of himself and his abilities, and he constructed this whole story, or at least exaggerated it while telling the story, and that none of that actually happened. And it's actually made pretty clear that when that scene is happening, how the people around them, when they are fighting, slowly disappear, and by the end of it, there's no one standing around them. It just shows you that there's flaws in his story and that everything's kind of been exaggerated. So again, I think this is just another case of someone only looking at a movie on its surface level and not digging a little deeper and trying to find fault in it where there isn't any. And that's exactly what he tried to do here. The last one that I'm actually going to talk about is I'm going to go to one more, and that's Silence of the Lambs. Alfred Hitchcock's 1960s Psycho pioneered the idea of cross-dressing serial killer. And imagine that Hollywood has used, an image that Hollywood has used frequently throughout the years, often with its surprised twist endings. The final scenes of Psycho says Norman Bates is not a transvestite. Similarly, Jonathan Demme's Best Picture winner takes pains to say that Buffalo Bill is not trans, but audience remember the women's makeup, his little poodle, the fact that he tucks his male genitals away to look female. Viewers remember the line about fava beans, and it's doubtful if they remember the clarification about Buffalo Bill. So essentially what they're saying is that they went out of their way to say that Buffalo Bill is not a transvestite, which to me would be a good thing, wouldn't it? Like, I feel like he's turning that into a bad thing, but isn't that a good thing? Because if they said that all these characters were transvestites, wouldn't that make cancel culture believe that all transvestites are being portrayed as being psychotic serial killers? And if they explicitly they don't exactly say it, but it's insinuated, whatever the case may be. But a lot of audiences don't need everything necessarily spoon-fed to them like today's audiences do. I think a lot of people back when they watched Silence of the Lambs didn't really think about Buffalo Bill or any of those scenes in the way that this guy is actually saying it. And I guess that's kind of the issue, is that modern audiences don't really know how to absorb these movies, and that's why they feel like there needs to be some kind of warning, I guess, before them to alert possibly easily offended people that this movie has certain things in it that could upset you. It's all about people's feelings, essentially. So again, it's just another case of people just not being able to decipher between fiction and reality. It's about a fictional story, a fictional character who murders women and dresses like a woman sometimes. Like, it's not really meant to be taken that seriously. But that is the world we live in. these are just some of the movies that now people are targeting in cancel culture. I want to know what you guys think about all this and how ridiculous it is. Please, as always, comment down below. I'd really appreciate it, and we could continue this discussion and even further. And I'll be looking forward to talking to all of you. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time right here on Real Shift. Peace out, and thanks for watching.